Nancy and I were watching one of our binge series. It's called Madam Secretary, when she turns to me and she says, "Who is that new guy?" And I said, "Well, they gave his name a couple scenes ago." And she looked at me and says, "Are you calling me stupid again?" And she stormed out of the room. And a Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests and members to be. Does that sound like it was overreacting? Well, it may surprise you to know that it actually wasn't. And after my speech today, you'll understand why that was not overreacting. I'm going to talk about something called the love bank, and then another called the magic ratio. This is something that is very important for all kinds of relationships, especially if they get into a bit of a conflict, as we did. So what is the love bank? Well, what is an ordinary bank? An ordinary bank is a place where you make deposits, you put money in, and you also withdraw from the bank. Now, in relationships, there's a similar concept, and it's called the love bank. Every time you do something that enhances the relationship, that draws you closer, you're making a deposit in that love bank, and the balance is going up. And every time that you do something that takes the relationship down a notch, that's making a withdrawal from the love bank. And just like in a regular bank, if you make enough withdrawals, the balance gets very low. Now think of how a regular bank works. If you have a nice high balance, then many times you'll actually get interest and the balance will increase. But if the balance falls below a certain point, then they start charging you fees. The same thing happens with a love bank. When things are very full, when you're feeling when there's all kinds of excess, when your bank level is so high, then even a little conflict like the comment that I made or the comment that she made to me, that can just maybe bring the balance down a little bit, but it's still pretty high. But when the balance is very low and you make a comment or do something that takes away from the relationship, then all of a sudden you go into a deficit. And when you go into a deficit, then all of a sudden, all those loving feelings, well, they just kind of go away. Just like your bank is going to charge you a fee for an overdraft. So what was happening, and this is very useful information, that my wife's reaction was totally logical, given that her love bank at that point was very low. And I didn't realize that. So what can you learn from this? Is that instead of hearing the criticism as I could have, you could realize that, oh, her love bank is going into default. And so I need to do something to raise the balance. Now, when you're talking about a bank, how do you raise the balance? Well, you make a deposit. You take money and you put it in. Well, what is the money? What is the monetary value in a love bank? It's doing things which increase that. Now, there's a whole topic on something called love languages. But basically, when you do something or say something that is positive and increases the connection of the relationship, then you've made a deposit in the love bank and it goes up. That's the good news. Are you ready for the bad news? The bad news is that researcher John Gottman has shown that for every negative thing that happens in a relationship, it takes five positive things to overcome that. That 5 to 1, that's the magic love ratio. Now, there are good neurological reasons for this. Why? Because pain affects us more deeply than pleasure. There are evolutionary reasons for that. So if something good happens, then yeah, that's great. But if something bad happens, like a saber-toothed tiger coming at you, if you don't pay attention to that, then you're not going to be around. And evolution takes care of that. Thank you very much, Mr. Darwin. That 5-to-1 ratio. Now, it's important to learn your partner's love language. And again, that's another, but you all know what enhances the relationship. You intuitively know. And so when you encounter something as I did, know that your partner's love bank has a very low balance. And so it takes 5 to just keep it at that level. And so it takes even more to start raising it, start increasing that balance. And that works in all kinds of relationships, not just intimate ones like this. You know, like Carl and I have been friends for many years. And so if we talk about something in Toastmasters, if Carl asked me to help him out, or I asked Carl to help me out, that increases our love bank. But if one of us starts to talk about politics, that's a withdrawal from our love bank. That's why we don't talk about politics very much. But this applies to all relationships. And so the next time that you hear something that sounds critical and that seems like an overreaction, understand it's not an overreaction. It just means that their love bank is at a very low balance, or maybe even overdrawn. And so what can you do? You can start making deposits in that love bank. Start doing things that enhance the relationship. Now, Nancy's love language is actually acts of service, as well as words of affirmation. And so, to the best that I can, my response, if it's going to be valuable, is to be starting to do more of those and to increase the love bank. So do that with all of your relationships. Understand the 5-to-1 magic love ratio. And may the force be with you.